They asked her name. She answered with one word, "Who?" As if identity didn't matter, only the mission was real. When SEAL Team 9 was trapped in the valley, 10 enemy snipers locking down every exit, the small woman silently raised her Mark 13, Mod 7. No team patch, no identification number, no one had ever seen her fire. But 15 minutes later, the entire valley fell silent, as all 10 enemy snipers collapsed, one by one, with horrifying precision. When SEAL Team 9 turned to look at her, only one question remained. What kind of monster are you? The Chinook helicopter cut through the dawn sky like a blade through silk, its rotors beating a rhythm that Captain Jake Briggs had memorized over 15 years of operations. Inside the belly of the aircraft, SEAL Team 9 ran their final weapons checks with the mechanical precision of men who had done this 1,000 times before. 2 minutes to LZ. The pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. Briggs scanned his team. 8 operators, each one a weapon refined by years of training and combat. Thompson on point, Martinez on comms, Rodriguez handling explosives. They were heading into the Karakoram range to eliminate a high-value target, an Iranian missile engineer who'd been selling guidance systems to terrorist cells. The mission brief had been standard, except for one detail. "Captain," Lieutenant Thompson said, nodding toward the lone figure sitting apart from the team. "Still don't understand why SOCOM sent a tech specialist on a direct action op." Briggs followed his gaze. She was small, maybe 5'4", with dark hair pulled back tight. No unit insignia on her tactical gear. No name tape. Just clean, unmarked multicam and a pack that seemed too light for extended operations. When they'd boarded at the forward operating base, she'd simply said, "Who?" "Who?" Briggs had asked. "Yes." "No, I'm asking your name." "I know," she'd replied, then moved to her seat without another word. Now, as the Chinook descended toward the landing zone, Briggs watched her. She wasn't nervous like most tech personnel on their first combat insertion. She wasn't excited like young operators on their first real mission. She just observed. Her eyes tracked every detail of the cabin, the team, the equipment, with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of snow and rotor wash. Team 9 moved out in practiced formation, weapons up, scanning sectors. The woman followed, staying close to the center of the formation as instructed. "Radio check," Martinez said into his headset. "Lima 1, good. Lima 2, good. Lima 3, good." The calls went down the line. 8 SEALs confirmed. The woman said nothing, had no radio to check. They moved through the pre-dawn darkness toward the target compound, 12 kilometers distant through mountain terrain. The woman kept pace without difficulty, never asking for a break, never complaining about the altitude or the cold. "She's in good shape for a tech," Thompson muttered to Briggs during a security halt. "Yeah," Briggs replied, watching her scan the ridgeline above them with focused attention. "Something's off about this whole thing. Think she's agency? Don't know. Don't like unknowns in my team." At the next halt, Briggs approached her. "You got a real name?" "Who?" she said again. "That's not a name. It's what you need to call me." "And what exactly is your job here?" The brief said technical support, but I don't see any equipment. She looked at him with eyes that were flat, professional, unreadable. "I observe. I advise if needed. I won't interfere with your operation." "You better not," Briggs said. "Because if you compromise my team—" "I won't," she interrupted quietly. "That's not what I do." Before he could press further, Thompson signaled movement ahead. The team shifted back into operational mode, the woman forgotten for the moment. But Briggs noticed she'd pulled a small notepad from her pocket and was sketching something. Angles, trajectories, distances. Like she was mapping the terrain in her head. Like a sniper would. By the time they reached the approach valley, the sun was beginning to crest the eastern peaks, painting the snowfields in shades of copper and gold. Briggs called a halt to reassess their route. "Martinez, try raising base." The communication specialist extended his antenna and keyed his radio. Static. "That's weird," Martinez said. "Should have clear line of sight from here. Try again." Martinez adjusted frequencies, checked his equipment. "Nothing, sir. Radio's fine, but—" The crack of a rifle shot echoed across the valley. Martinez's radio antenna exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered composite. "Contact," Thompson shouted. The team scattered to cover positions behind rocks and snow berms. Briggs pulled Martinez down, checking him for wounds. The operator was shaken but unhurt. "Sniper," Rodriguez called from his position. "Long range, very long range." Briggs scanned the surrounding terrain through his scope. The valley was a natural kill zone, overlooked by dozens of ridges and rock formations. The shot had come from at least 1,000 meters away, maybe more, to hit a target as small as a radio antenna. "Anyone see muzzle flash?" "Negative. Negative." The team reported no visual contact. Whoever had taken that shot was a professional, and they just announced that SEAL Team 9 was in their sights. Briggs looked back to check on the woman. She'd moved to a slight rise, standing fully exposed, her face turned toward the sky. As he watched, she reached down, picked up a handful of snow, and let it drift through her fingers. Then she closed her eyes and stood completely still. "Get down," Briggs hissed. She didn't move, just stood there, face tilted up, eyes closed, like she was listening to music no one else could hear. "Are you insane?" She opened her eyes and looked directly at a ridgeline 2,000 meters to the northeast. Wind is shifting, coming from 280 degrees now, gusting to 12 miles per hour. Temperature drop of 3 degrees in the last 10 minutes. Barometric pressure falling. "What?" "The weather," she said simply. "It's changing." Briggs stared at her. "Get to cover, now." She complied, moving to a position near him with fluid efficiency. "Captain, you need to understand something. That shot wasn't meant to kill anyone." "I noticed. It was a message. They're telling you this valley is locked down. They control the high ground." She pulled out her notepad again, began sketching rapidly. Based on the angle of impact and the sound delay, the shooter was approximately 1,400 meters away, elevation 200 meters above our position. But that's not the problem. Then what is? She turned the notepad toward him. Her sketch showed the valley with multiple overlapping fields of fire marked out in precise detail. If they put one sniper there, they've put more everywhere else. This is a coordinated trap. "How do you know that?" "Because that's what I would do." Before Briggs could respond to that unsettling statement, another shot rang out, kicking up snow 3 feet from Thompson's position. The lieutenant rolled behind better cover. "They're just playing with us," Rodriguez said. "No," the woman said quietly. "They're positioning. Watch." Over the next 5 minutes, carefully spaced shots forced Team 9 to reposition multiple times, always pushing them toward the center of the valley, away from the rock formations that offered the best cover. "They're hurting us," Thompson realized. "Yes," she confirmed. "Into the kill zone. When you're all grouped together, they'll open fire for real." "How many?" Briggs demanded. She closed her eyes again, listened. 10, maybe 12. Fan pattern, covering every exit vector. High-quality shooters, patient, disciplined. "And how exactly do you know this?" "Because I can hear them breathing." Briggs felt ice run down his spine that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. "What are you?" She looked at him with those flat, professional eyes. "Someone you need right now." Another shot. This time it hit Corporal Davis in the shoulder, spinning him around. Not a killing shot, but the scream of pain echoed across the valley. "Man down," Thompson called. Briggs felt his options collapsing. They were pinned, communications were dead, and they were facing an unknown number of highly skilled snipers who had them completely locked down. In another 10 minutes, when the sun was fully up and the shadows disappeared, his team would be picked apart. He turned to the woman. "You know weapons?" "I observe," she said. "That's not what I asked." "Captain Briggs," she said, using his name for the first time. "If I help you, you need to trust me. And you need to keep your team absolutely silent. One sound at the wrong moment could expose position. What are you going to do?" She stood, brushing snow from her pants. "I'm going to solve your problem." Martinez had pulled Davis behind a boulder and was applying pressure to the shoulder wound. The corporal would live, but he needed medical evacuation soon, which meant they needed to break out of this trap, fast. The woman, who, moved to where Briggs had his team gathered. "Sir," Thompson said, pointing. "Her pack." For the first time, Briggs noticed what should have been obvious. Her pack wasn't light because it carried minimal gear. It was light because it carried only one thing. She unzipped it with practiced efficiency and pulled out a rifle case. Custom hard shell, foam-lined, bearing no markings. When she opened it, Briggs felt his breath catch. The Mk13 Mod 7 inside was a work of art. Custom barrel, upgraded scope, modified stock. But more than that, it looked used. Worn in the way only a weapon that's been fired thousands of times becomes worn. This wasn't a ceremonial piece. This was a working tool. "You're not a tech specialist," Briggs said quietly. "No. Who are you?" "Someone who was never here." She began assembling the rifle with movements so smooth and automatic they seemed almost unconscious. "Captain, I need you to understand something. When I start shooting, you will be tempted to watch. Don't. Keep your eyes on your sectors. Keep your team ready to move. And whatever happens, don't ask questions until we're extracted." "Why?" "Because if I answer them, you'll have to be debriefed. And that's a process neither of us wants." She finished assembling the weapon and loaded it with ammunition from a small box in her pack. "Custom rounds," Briggs noticed. "Not standard military issue." Rodriguez whistled low. "Lady, that's a 1,500-meter rifle on a good day. We're talking double that distance to some of those positions." "I know," she said. You know? Rodriguez laughed, but it was the harsh laugh of a man under extreme stress. "Captain, with all respect, we need to call for air support, fast extraction, something we can't rely on." Another shot cracked across the valley. This time it hit the rock 6 inches above Martinez's head, showering him with stone fragments. "No time," Briggs said. "She shoots, or we die here. Those are the options." He turned to her. "You really think you can take them out?" "Yes." "All of them?" "Yes." "How long?" She checked the sky, the wind, the light. 15 minutes, maybe less. "And if you miss?" "I don't miss, Captain." The certainty in her voice wasn't arrogance. It was just fact. Like saying water was wet or mountains were tall. "Do it," Briggs ordered. She nodded once, then moved away from the group, traveling low and fast across the snowfield to a position that offered minimal cover, but, Briggs realized, perfect sightlines to multiple ridges. She lay down in the snow, the rifle settling against her shoulder like it was part of her body. And then she became absolutely still. "What's she doing?" Thompson whispered. "Hunting," Briggs replied. From her position, the woman who called herself, who let the world narrow to numbers and wind and light. Heart rate, 48 beats per minute. Breathing, 6 breaths per minute. Body temperature, dropping to match the environment. This was the state she lived for, the place where everything else fell away and only the shot mattered. Target 1, Northeast Ridge, 1,400 meters. The one who'd fired the first shot. He thought he was hidden, but the morning sun was reflecting off his scope lens. Rookie mistake. Wind from 280 degrees, gusting. Temperature -3 Celsius. Barometric pressure 890 millibars, and falling. She didn't use a rangefinder. Didn't need one. The distance was written in the angle of the terrain, the time delay between shot and impact, the way sound carried across the valley. She'd made this calculation 10,000 times before in 10,000 different places. Adjustment for wind, 2.3 mils left. Adjustment for elevation, 8.7 mils up. Adjustment for Coriolis effect at this latitude, 0.4 mils right. Adjustment for ammunition temperature, negligible at current range. Adjustment for scope can't. 0, weapon is level. She didn't think these things, she felt them. The mathematics flowed through her like water through stone, natural and inevitable. She exhaled half a breath and held. Between heartbeats, when the body is perfectly still, she squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar force. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. 3 seconds later, the sound of something heavy falling echoed from the northeast ridge. Target 1, eliminated. Behind her, she heard Briggs whisper, "Holy God." She didn't acknowledge it. She was already calculating target 2. Southwest ridge, 1,650 meters, partially concealed behind a rock formation. He'd moved after target. 1 fell, smart, but he'd moved to the left when he should have moved right. Now his boot was visible, just the heel, but that was enough. She could trace the line of his body from that single point. The wind had shifted, 285 degrees now, stronger, 14 miles per hour with gusts to 18. That meant more drift, more compensation, but there was something else. The snow was starting to fall again, light flurries that would affect bullet trajectory, add random variables. She had to work fast before conditions degraded further. She adjusted her scope, compensated for the increased wind, and fired. The crack of the rifle. The long pause. Then a cry of pain cut short, echoing from the southwest. Target 2. Eliminated. "This isn't possible," Martinez breathed. "Those are Olympic-level shots." Rodriguez made the sign of the cross. "She's not human." Target 3 was clever. He'd seen what happened to 1 and 2 and had repositioned to a crevice in the rock face, barely visible even with magnification. But the problem with hiding in a crevice is that it limits your mobility. He couldn't shift when he needed to, couldn't respond to changing conditions. She found him by tracking his rifle barrel, the only part of him that had to protrude to maintain a firing position. 8 inches of matte black metal against gray stone. Most people wouldn't see it. She saw it like it was painted neon. Distance, 1,890 meters. Wind, increasing. Snow, getting heavier. This shot required split-second timing, firing between gusts when the wind dropped to its minimum velocity. She waited, breathed, felt the wind pattern. There, a lull, just 2 seconds long. She fired. The bullet traveled for nearly 3 seconds, fighting wind and gravity and the Coriolis force that pulled it right as it spun through the air. She'd calculated all of it, accounted for all of it. The rifle barrel in the crevice disappeared. A moment later, it clattered down the rock face. Target 3, eliminated. "She's clearing the valley," Briggs said, voice tight with something between awe and fear. "She's systematically taking them all out." "Sir," Thompson said, "permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "What the hell did SOCOM send us?" Briggs had no answer. Target 4 and 5 were working together, a spotter-shooter team on the eastern ridge. Good tactics. The shooter was concealed while the spotter called corrections. But working in pairs meant they had to communicate, which meant movement, which meant exposure. She watched them for 30 seconds, analyzing their pattern. The spotter would rise slightly every 45 seconds to scan with binoculars. That was the window. She waited for the next cycle. The spotter rose. She tracked him for a heartbeat, then fired. The spotter fell. The shooter, trained by reflex, turned to check his partner. 2 seconds of distraction, 2 seconds of his profile exposed. She cycled the bolt and fired again. Target 4, eliminated. Target 5, eliminated. 5 down, 5 to go, and now the remaining snipers knew they were being hunted. They'd go to ground, become harder to find, but she could still hear them, could still feel their presence like pressure against her skin. Target 6 was on the northern ridge, low and flat. He'd learned from the others and hadn't moved in 3 minutes. But humans have to breathe, and breath creates condensation in cold air. She saw the faint mist rising from his position, tracked it back to its source. Distance, 2,100 meters, the longest shot yet. At this range, she was pushing the absolute limits of the rifle's effective range. The bullet would drop over 40 feet, drift 8 feet in the wind, and take nearly 4 seconds to arrive. She made the calculations, adjusted, fired. The mist stopped rising from the northern ridge. Target 6, eliminated. 1,500 meters was the Mk-13's max effective range, Rodriguez said, his voice hollow. She's shooting double that. This violates physics. No, Briggs said quietly. It violates what we thought was possible. There's a difference. Target 7 had found a spider hole, a natural depression in the rocks that offered overhead cover. Smart, but the depression created an acoustic pocket, and she could hear the way sound reflected off its walls when the wind blew across it. She fired 3 shots in rapid succession, walking them across the edges of the depression. The third shot ricocheted off the wall at an angle she'd calculated precisely, striking the target from above. Target 7, eliminated. She's using geometry, Thompson realized. She's bouncing shots. That's impossible, Martinez said. Apparently not. Targets 8 and 9 were the most dangerous. They'd recognized what was happening and had repositioned to a reverse slope position where she had no direct line of sight. They were smart enough to know they couldn't win a sniping duel with her, so they'd eliminated the duel. But they'd made one mistake. They'd positioned themselves where they could no longer see the SEAL team either. They were protecting themselves instead of completing their mission. She stood up, fully exposed, and walked 20 meters to her left. Behind her, she heard Briggs start to shout, a warning, then stop. He was beginning to understand. She wasn't reckless. Everything she did had purpose. From her new position, the reverse slope became visible. Not much, just a sliver of rock face, a narrow angle. But it was enough. She fired twice. Target 8, eliminated. Target 9, eliminated. 9 down, 1 left. And the last one was the dangerous one. The leader. The master sniper who had organized this trap. She could feel him out there, watching, calculating, understanding that he was facing something unexpected. He would be the hardest to kill. She reloaded her weapon and scanned the valley with eyes that missed nothing. Where would she position herself if she were him? Where would she go to maintain advantage against an opponent who had just eliminated 9 highly skilled shooters in 12 minutes? There. The western cliff face, 2,400 meters distant. A position so extreme, so difficult, that no one would think to check it. A position that required a 2-kilometer hike in darkness to reach. A position that offered a perfect vantage of the entire valley. She couldn't see him, couldn't hear him, but she knew he was there the way a wolf knows where the elk will be. "Captain," she said quietly, "the last one is about to make his move. When I fire, move your team immediately. Don't wait for confirmation. Just move." "Where?" Briggs asked. "South, fast and low. You'll have a 30-second window. Use it." She settled back into her firing position. Heart rate, 46. Breathing, 4 breaths per minute. The world became nothing but wind and distance and the single point where she knew the enemy must be. And then she saw it. A glint. Not from a scope lens, this one was too smart for that. From a brass cartridge case catching the light for just an instant as he chambered around. 2,400 meters. Wind now at 20 miles per hour, gusting to 25, snow falling steadily, temperature -5 and dropping, barometric pressure unstable. This was an impossible shot. The kind of shot that existed only in theory, in mathematical models. The kind of shot no one made in real combat. She'd made it before. She adjusted for everything. Wind, cold, distance, the curvature of the earth itself. She adjusted for variables that didn't exist in normal ballistics calculations. And then she did something that looked like instinct but was actually the culmination of 10,000 hours of training. She fired. The man known as the Jackal had been killing for 15 years. 3 armies, 2 intelligence services, and countless independent contracts. He'd taken shots that other snipers called impossible and made them look routine. In the world of elite marksmen, his name was spoken with respect and fear. He'd watched this woman eliminate 9 of his team with growing disbelief. Each shot had been perfect. Not lucky, not good, perfect. The kind of shooting that suggested she existed on a different level than everyone else. Now, as he chambered his final round, he had to acknowledge a truth he'd never confronted before. He was outmatched. But he was also proud. And pride meant he wouldn't retreat. He found her in his scope, small, motionless, eyes closed like she was sleeping. He centered the crosshairs on her head, range, 2,400 meters. He'd made this shot exactly twice in his career, both times in perfect conditions. Today's conditions were far from perfect. But if he waited for perfect, he'd die without firing. He controlled his breathing, felt the wind, made his corrections, and fired. The bullet left his rifle traveling at 2,800 feet per second. It would take 2.9 seconds to cross the distance to its target. He watched through his scope, waiting for the inevitable red mist. But in those 2.9 seconds, the woman moved. Not a flinch, not a panic response. A calculated, precise movement, shifting her head exactly 6 inches to the left. The bullet passed through empty air where her skull had been and cracked into the rock behind her. The Jackal felt fear for the first time in a decade. She'd heard his shot and moved. Not after it fired. She'd been moving before he pulled the trigger. like she'd known it was coming. He started to reposition, survival instinct overriding pride. But as he moved, he saw something that made his blood turn cold. She was looking directly at him, across 2,400 meters of mountain valley, through snow and wind and impossible distance. She was looking at him, and she was smiling. Then she fired. He saw the muzzle flash, had time to think. She's shooting at the same moment I'm moving, there's no way she can calculate. The bullet arrived, but it didn't hit him. Instead, it struck his rifle's receiver with tremendous force, shattering the bolt assembly and sending metal fragments into his face and chest. The rifle exploded in his hands, the force throwing him backward. He lay on the rock, bleeding, half blind, unable to believe what had just happened. She hadn't killed him. She'd destroyed his weapon instead. A shot that required even more precision than a headshot, because the target was smaller and harder to hit. She'd made that shot to send a message. I could have killed you, but I chose not to. Or maybe, you're not worth killing. Through his remaining eye, he saw her stand up, collect her weapon, and walk away without looking back. Move, now, Briggs shouted, and Team 9 broke from cover, carrying Davis between them as they ran for the southern edge of the valley. No shots followed them. The valley was silent except for wind and falling snow. They made it to the rocks, into dead ground, and collapsed behind cover. Everyone was breathing hard, adrenaline burning through their systems. Sound off, Briggs ordered. Lima 1, good. Lima 2, good. All 8 SEALs confirmed status. Davis was hurt but stable. They'd survived. The woman approached their position, rifle broken down and stowed in her pack again. She looked completely calm, like she'd just finished a training exercise rather than one of the most remarkable shooting displays in military history. You have a 30-minute window before enemy reinforcements arrive, she said. I recommend you use it to call for extraction. Our radio's destroyed, Martinez said. She pulled a small satellite phone from her pocket and handed it to him. Use mine. As Martinez moved away to make the call, Briggs stepped close to her. I need to know who you are. I told you. Who? That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting, Captain. Thompson joined them, his face pale. Ma'am, I've been a SEAL for 12 years. I've worked with Delta, with DevGru, with CIA's Special Activities Division. I've never seen shooting like that. Hell, I've never heard of shooting like that. Then you need to meet more interesting people, she said. Where did you train? Rodriguez asked, coming over with the rest of the team. Who taught you to shoot like that? People you've never met, in places that don't exist. That's not an answer either, Briggs said. She looked at him with those flat, professional eyes. Captain Briggs, you and your team are excellent operators. You've completed 127 successful missions with a casualty rate below 2%. You're among the best in JSOC. But there are levels above what you do. Missions that can't be acknowledged. Operators who can't exist. I'm part of that world. Ghost programs, Thompson breathed. I thought those were myths. Most ghosts are, she agreed. The real ones don't leave evidence. Martinez returned with the satellite phone. Extraction helicopter inbound, 15 minutes. They're asking for the mission status and, he paused, they're asking for confirmation that asset W0 is secure. W0? Briggs said. The woman took the phone from Martinez. This is W0. Mission parameters achieved. SEAL Team 9 is secure. Request immediate extraction with medical support for 1 wounded. She listened for a moment. Confirmed. W0 out. She handed the phone back to Martinez, who was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. W0, Rodriguez said slowly. The W stands for who? Maybe, she said. Or maybe it stands for something else. And the 0? Thompson asked. That's the interesting part, a new voice said. They all turned. A man in civilian clothes was walking toward them from the southern rocks, appearing as if from nowhere. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and the kind of face that suggested a lifetime of keeping secrets. Colonel Harris, Briggs said, surprised. Sir, what are you doing here? Collecting my asset, Harris replied. He looked at the woman. W0, status? 10 targets eliminated, 1 incapacitated, 0 friendly casualties. Mission complete. Excellent. Harris turned to Briggs. Captain, What I'm about to tell you is classified at a level above your clearance, but given the circumstances, you deserve to know at least part of the truth. Sir, the W0 designation doesn't stand for who. It stands for Weapon Zero. The Zero designation is reserved for assets who exist outside normal command structure. Operators so specialized, so effective, that they're only deployed when all other options have failed. I don't understand, Briggs said. She's one person. How can one person be a weapon? Harris smiled grimly. You just watched her eliminate 10 enemy snipers in 15 minutes at distances that shouldn't be possible. You tell me. Thompson stepped forward. Sir, with respect, that kind of shooting requires more than training. It requires. He trailed off, unsure how to finish. Something other than normal human capability? Harris finished. Yes, it does. The woman, W0, spoke for the first time. Colonel, they don't need to know more than that. They've earned it, Harris countered. He looked at the SEAL team. Gentlemen, do any of you know why elite snipers track their kills? To maintain accountability, Rodriguez said. To remember the weight of what we do. Partially, Harris agreed. But also because at extreme distances, beyond 1,500 meters, shooting becomes more than a physical skill. It requires an understanding of systems, weather, ballistics, terrain, mathematics, that approaches prescience. Most snipers make 2 or 3 shots at that range in their entire career. W0 makes them routinely. Because she doesn't just understand the systems, she is part of them. That doesn't make sense, Martinez said. It doesn't have to make sense, Harris replied. It just has to work, and it does. The sound of rotor blades approached from the south. The extraction helicopter was arriving. Load up, Briggs ordered his team. They moved to the landing zone, carrying Davis between them. Briggs held back, standing with Harris and W0. Sir, one more question. Make it quick, Captain. Why did she spare the last one? The jackal. She could have killed him. Harris looked at W0, who shrugged slightly. Because, she said, dead men tell no tales. But wounded men tell stories, and stories become legends. And legends make the next enemy hesitate just a moment longer before pulling the trigger. Psychological warfare, Briggs realized. Everything is warfare, Captain. The question is whether you're fighting smart or fighting hard. W0 fights smart. The helicopter touched down. Harris gestured for W0 to board first. She picked up her pack and started toward the aircraft, then paused and looked back at Briggs. Captain, you asked me earlier what I am. I'll tell you this much. I'm what happens when someone takes everything that makes a sniper effective and removes everything that makes them human. The patience without the doubt. The calculation without the hesitation. The certainty without the fear. That's what a Weapon Zero is. That sounds lonely, Briggs said quietly. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been regret or sadness or the memory of a person she used to be. Yes, she said, it is. Then she turned and walked to the helicopter without looking back. The helicopter lifted off, carrying SEAL Team 9, Colonel Harris, and the woman designated W0. Davis was stabilized, receiving IV fluids and pain medication from the flight medic. The rest of the team sat in exhausted silence, processing what they'd witnessed. Briggs watched W0 through the cabin. She sat apart from the group, cleaning her rifle with practiced movements. The weapon received more attention than any of the people around her. Sir, Thompson said, moving close so only Briggs could hear. We going to talk about this? Talk about what? About the fact that we just watched something that shouldn't exist eliminate 10 targets in conditions that make normal sniping impossible. We're not going to talk about it at all, Briggs said firmly. Colonel Harris is right. This is above our clearance. We write our reports, we mention a technical specialist provided support, and we forget we ever saw what she did. Can we forget it? Thompson asked. Because I don't think I can unsee that. You'll learn to, Briggs said. It's what we do. We see things, we do things, and then we put them in a box and move on. But he knew Thompson was right. This wasn't something you forgot. This was the kind of operation that stayed with you, that woke you up at night wondering what you'd really seen. Across the cabin, W0 finished cleaning her rifle and began writing in a small notebook. Briggs watched her make precise entries, logging distances and wind conditions and shot parameters with scientific detachment. She's documenting the kills, Rodriguez observed, having noticed the same thing, like a researcher recording data. Maybe that's all it is to her, Martinez said. Data, numbers. No different than calculating a trajectory or measuring wind speed. No, Thompson said quietly. You saw her face when she shot the jackal. There was something there. Recognition, maybe, or respect. She knows these are people she's killing. Then how does she do it? Rodriguez asked. How do you make those shots and stay sane? Colonel Harris, who had been listening, spoke up. By being selected for the inability to not stay sane, W0 program candidates undergo psychological screening that goes beyond anything you've experienced. We're not looking for psychopaths or sociopaths. We're looking for something specific. People who can compartmentalize trauma, who can process death as information rather than tragedy, but who still maintain enough humanity to understand when not to pull the trigger. That's a narrow range, Briggs said. Very narrow. We screen thousands of candidates. We find maybe one every few years who fits the profile. And even then, most of them wash out during training. How long has she been doing this? Thompson asked. Harris considered the question. That's classified. But I'll tell you this. She's been W0 longer than any of you have been SEALs. They flew in silence for a while, the helicopter cutting through mountain air toward the forward operating base. Below them, the valley where they'd nearly died receded into the distance. W0 closed her notebook and stared out the window. Briggs followed her gaze and saw what she was looking at, the western cliff face where the jackal had made his last stand. From this altitude, the distance seemed impossibly vast. Sir, Briggs said to Harris, permission to speak with W0? Denied, Harris said. You've already had more conversation with her than most operators get. The less you know about her, the better. Why? Because if you know too much, you become a security risk, and security risks get transferred to desk jobs in places where they can't talk to anyone interesting. Harris's tone was light, but the message was clear. Back off. Briggs nodded and settled back into his seat. Around him, his team was doing the same, each man lost in his own thoughts about what they'd witnessed. Only Martinez kept staring at W0, his expression troubled. Finally, he spoke up, addressing her directly. Ma'am, I have to know. That last shot, the one that destroyed the jackal's rifle, how did you calculate that? The target was moving. You were compensating for extreme distance, and you hit a target the size of a coffee cup. That's not just skill, that's impossible? W0 said, looking at him. Yes, ma'am. Impossible. She considered her answer for a long moment. Do you know what the difference is between a good sniper and a great one, Sergeant Martinez? No, ma'am. A good sniper calculates everything and then takes the shot. A great sniper calculates everything, takes the shot, and trusts that they haven't missed anything. But a perfect sniper, she paused. A perfect sniper doesn't calculate at all. They just know. The wind, the distance, the target movement, it all becomes instinct, processed faster than conscious thought. The shot fires before the mind even registers the decision. That's not human, Martinez said softly. No, she agreed, it's not. The helicopter began its descent toward the FOB. Through the windows, they could see the base sprawling across the valley floor, a small city of tents and structures surrounded by defensive walls. As they approached the landing pad, Harris spoke to the pilot, then turned to Briggs. Captain, I need your team to deplane first. W0 and I will be transferring to a different aircraft immediately. Where are you taking her? Briggs asked. Somewhere that doesn't concern you. The helicopter touched down. The crew chief opened the door, and Team 9 filed out, carrying Davis on a stretcher toward the waiting medical personnel. Briggs was the last to leave. He paused at the door, looking back at W0. Thank you, he said simply. You saved my team. She nodded once. That was the mission. Still, thank you. Captain Briggs, she said, if someone asks you about today, tell them you had support from a CIA technical specialist. Tell them she provided communication, support, and tactical advice. Tell them anything except the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is that you survived because someone who doesn't exist saved you. The truth is that there are people in the shadows keeping you safe from threats you'll never see. The truth is that the world is much stranger and more dangerous than you know, and people like me are all that stand between you and that darkness." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then looked away. "Goodbye, Captain." Briggs stepped out of the helicopter and joined his team. Behind him, he heard the rotor speed increase as the aircraft prepared to lift off again. "Sir," Thompson said, coming up beside him, "you think we'll ever see her again?" Briggs watched the helicopter rise into the sky, banking away toward the mountains. "I hope not, Lieutenant, because if we do, it means something has gone very, very wrong." 3 weeks later, in an unmarked building in Virginia, Colonel Harris sat across from a woman in civilian clothes. Between them was a thick file marked W0 Operation Report, Eyes Only. "The SEAL team?" she asked. "Debriefed. Reminded of their security obligations. None of them will talk. And the Jackal? Recovered by friendly assets. He's alive, minus an eye and most of his pride. He's already spreading stories about the ghost sniper who took down his entire team single-handedly." The woman smiled. "Good. Let the legend grow. Is that wise? Eventually, someone's going to start asking questions. Let them ask. A legend that can't be proven is more valuable than a weapon that can be tracked. Our enemies need to know we have capabilities they can't match. They just don't need to know the details." Harris nodded. "And W0? Already deployed on her next assignment. Tokyo. Industrial espionage case that's escalated to assassination attempts. She'll be providing counter-sniper protection for a tech executive." "She never rests, does she?" "She doesn't know how to rest. That's what makes her effective. That's also what makes her dangerous. To our enemies. To everyone," the woman corrected. "Colonel, you've been running the W0 program for 5 years. You know what she is. She's a weapon that thinks for itself. Sooner or later, every weapon like that becomes unpredictable. She's loyal. She's functional. There's a difference. Loyalty requires emotional attachment. She has none. She operates based on mission parameters and threat assessment. Right now, those parameters align with our interests. But if they ever stop aligning, then what?" Harris challenged. "We eliminate our most effective asset because of a hypothetical? We prepare for every contingency. That's our job." Harris looked down at the file, at the mission summaries and kill counts and psychological evaluations that painted a picture of someone who wasn't quite human anymore, if she ever had been. "She saved 8 men in that valley," he said quietly. 8 good operators who would be dead without her. That has to count for something." "It does," the woman agreed. "It counts for one more successful mission." "But Harris, don't make the mistake of thinking she did it because she cares about those men. She did it because that was her mission. If her mission had been to eliminate them instead of protect them, she would have done that just as efficiently." "I don't believe that." "Then, you haven't read the full psychological profile. She's not a hero, Colonel. She's a tool. An incredibly effective, incredibly dangerous tool. We point her at problems and they disappear. But we never forget what she is." Harris stood, picking up the file. "With respect, ma'am, I disagree. I've worked with W0 for 5 years. I've seen her make decisions that went beyond simple mission parameters. She has judgment. She has discretion. She has something that looks a lot like conscience." "Then pray that conscience continues to align with our interests," the woman said. "Because the day it doesn't, we'll have created the single most dangerous threat this country has ever faced." Harris left the office, carrying the file with him. In the hallway, he paused by a window overlooking the parking lot below. Somewhere out there, in Tokyo or Berlin or Damascus, a woman with no name was taking up a rifle to solve problems that diplomacy and conventional warfare couldn't touch. He thought about what the woman had said, about W0 being a tool rather than a person. But he'd seen her eyes when she talked about the loneliness of her existence. Tools didn't feel lonely. Tools didn't understand what they'd given up to become what they were. She was more than a weapon. The question was whether anyone else would ever see that, and whether it mattered if they did.